How you doing, guys? So, was out walking with the wife this morning, and of course, the topic of the day was the watering down of the martial art of jiu-jitsu. Again, there's memes going around this morning about that guy Derek who got his black belt in like 3.5 years. Is kind of a jack dude, had thousands of hours of private lessons, hasn't proven himself in any sort of competition. There's no footage of him really rolling against anybody of significance, but it only took him 3.5 years to get his black belt, and it looks like he's just paid his way there with a bunch of high-level guys showing him some moves. But anyway, so that's what started the conversation, and I was whinging about how just about every martial art that becomes a sport just gets ruined, right? And so, I've seen the same thing happen in Taekwondo. I was literally doing Taekwondo with the head of the World Taekwondo Federation, who was my coach, when he came to the academy. I don't know, I was maybe one of the first in the world to even hear that Taekwondo was going to be in the Olympic Games. And he came to the academy one day with a bunch of pads, chest pads and stuff like this, and said it's going to be in the Olympic Games. And from memory, that was like 85 or 84 or something, maybe, somewhere around there. Yeah, so very, very early on, before, yeah. And so I was like, oh no, it's going to ruin that too, because the Olympics is all about making a spectacle that's short and exciting that people will watch for a short period of time and then put a lot of advertising around it. That's why the premier event used to be the marathon. So does anybody watch the marathon? I guarantee you've never watched the whole marathon, right? And they don't really promote it much because you can't put advertising around it. It's so long. So what they do is they take the 100 meters, which is the shortest race possible, and then they promote that as the premier event, not because it's the most important event. It's because they can place a lot of advertising. It's only 10 seconds long. All the advertising, all the ad revenue that they can pump around it, that's where the IOC makes a lot of their money. It's a scum organization. There's a book called The Lords of the Rings. Yeah, there's 2 books. The guy was actually put in prison for writing it. Anyway, so it just ruins any sport because it takes a martial art and then tries to make a spectacle out of it. And jiu-jitsu is going exactly the same way. I never thought I would see it happen, but of course it's happened, People wearing rainbow-colored gis and camouflage gis and doing all sorts of stupid stuff that would never work in the street, and it drives me crazy, right? I hate it, right? Because it's not a martial art anymore, yeah? And, karate was the same. Karate used to be a complete martial art. It even has throws and foot sweeps and weaponry and everything in it. And it was a complete martial art, And then goes to the Olympics, turns into a point fighting thing, and the whole essence of karate is just lost. The same in judo. Judo was a complete martial art. Kicking, punching, throwing, grappling, weapons, had the whole thing there, and then becomes a sport aimed at the Olympics, turns into whoever gets a throw wins, bam, 10-second match or whatever it happens to be, put it on TV, make lots of money around the advertising and ruin the original art. So if people are wondering why judo seems to have lost its way in some way, yes, arguably it's the most practiced martial art, maybe in line with Taekwondo in the world, but participation numbers don't tell the story. That just means it's highly accessible to everybody, right? And, when it becomes an Olympic, one of the reasons why people want their sport to become an Olympic sport is because of government funding. That's why. That's end of story. They get loads and loads of funding from the government. They can afford really fancy schools, amazing funding for trips to go overseas and do all these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, all you're doing is bastardizing what used to be an amazing martial art. And me coming from my father, who was in the military very heavily, very, very practical fighting guy, very into judo and boxing and stuff like that, wasn't interested in stuff that didn't work, then I've grown up with a similar mentality. A lot of security work. I know and see what works in the street. I don't think that in the sport of jiu-jitsu you should be dedicating half of your life or more than half of your life to learning just leg attacks, when if you add just slapping to it, if you watch sport combat jiu-jitsu, as soon as slaps are added, just slaps, like 90% of all the lower body attacks just disappear. Yeah, right? And personally, I don't believe that that's a martial art. Yeah, right? Hence why I'm so heavily invested and always have been in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, and of course, not all Gracie academies are the same, but the lineage that I follow through from Helio and Rickson and Pedro is all about the practicality of the art first. Yeah, get your purple belt, get all your solid foundations under you. Yeah, know how to fight, know good jiu-jitsu, and then after purple belt, you can start experimenting a bit, right? That's my personal view. It's the view of those that I train under. And I just hate seeing this just watering down. Everyone's in a hurry to get their black belt. Everyone's in a hurry to get their blue belt. What's the fastest that you can get things? And to me, it's just horrific. Back in the day, we would brag about how long it was taking us to get something. Yeah, it was so difficult to get your blue belt, so difficult to get your purple belt. Brown belt just seemed almost unachievable. And then these days, guys are racing to try and get their black belt. Yeah, and to me, it just seems absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, jiu-jitsu just, to me, seems to have lost its way as a martial art completely. So it's up to people like myself and those, you know, on the Rickson Pedro Sau side of jiu-jitsu to make sure that this real martial art stays alive, that there is kicking and punching and throws and grappling and weaponry and stuff like this, that it's a practical martial art. And do the practical stuff first, right? Don't go into like all your inverted fancy berimbolo stuff and then go, well, later I'm going to learn to defend myself. Well, I'm like, no, it doesn't really work like that. Yeah, right? You should be learning to defend yourself from day one. Like even with our 4-year-olds, we are constantly throwing strikes at their head. We're constantly, you know, like making them aware of things that could hit them, you know, and their balance and base and simple things like this. And always trying to grab throats and do what is going to happen in a playground fight. Kids are not going to be like, they're going to stick their forearm on your throat. That's one of our basic techniques that we teach 4-year-old kids. If someone puts their forearm on your throat inside the guard and leans on your throat, what to do about it? What do you do if they grab your throat? Yeah, what do you do if they're trying to punch you in the face or trying to grab your face? How do you do that? And making it a habit from day one, early on, yeah, right? So that you develop really, really good habits. So that you don't let people touch your face, that you don't let people grab your throat, yeah? And just seeing what it's done to so many other martial arts, and now seeing like the sportification, and it's beyond me. It after spending my life dedicated to martial arts since I was like 4 years old, 5 years old, yeah, like all the bruises and punching and kicking and throwing and falling on hardwood floors and grappling on hardwood floors and all the fighting in nightclubs and out on the street and all these sorts of things. And then when I found jiu-jitsu, and it just kicked my ass, and I was like, this is amazing. And I trained with a bunch of killers, you know, and, you know, there was no real sport at all. There was like the UFC and Vale-Tudo, no rules, headbutts, no gloves, anything goes. And that's the environment that we were learning this martial art in. And we were very, very proud of what we were doing. And it was very, very hard work. And you don't have to start off like that. But that should be the goal, you know. That's why at our place, the blue belt grading isn't ass kicking. It is really, really difficult. And anyone that's watched our blue belt gradings knows exactly what's coming up. So, you know, by the time you get your fourth stripe on your white belt, you've already been, you know, inducted into all the striking and grappling and all those sorts of things, and you've probably put the gloves on a few times and started to hit each other and stuff like that. And then the last, you know, 6 months or so leading up to the blue belt grading, there was a lot of that stuff. Yeah, there was a lot of that. And so the blue belt, to me, says that you've done the hard yards, you know how to fight, you're going to be confident, you can handle people in the street. After blue belt, then it's jiu-jitsu versus jiu-jitsu. Then it starts getting more counter for counter for counter kind of stuff. But yeah, it's heartbreaking to see billionaires or whatever buying their way to black belts and stuff like this. It's heartbreaking to see that this art that I love so much, that I've been a part of, I don't know, since 97. What is that, 25 years, 30 years, whatever it is. Then, you know, just falling apart with the likes of everyone just making an absolute mockery out of the martial art. It's horrible to see it. And yeah, anyway, the wife asked me to do a video. I thought I'd get really upset and go kind of crazy about it, but yeah, it's happened at every other sport, every other martial art that's become too much of a sport, you know. And I watched Taekwondo and karate and judo go through it, and I saw the old guys like whinging about what was happening, and I didn't really understand it that much. But now that it's happened to a martial art that I started because of how practical it was, it's solved all the problems of so many other martial arts, and I learned so much about fighting and about, you know, real world self-defense and real world fighting. And then being able to go to the nightclub that I worked at that was incredibly violent. There was lots and lots of fights all the time. And then being able to see it play out in those scenarios and see the change that it brought in myself, you know, primarily being a striker, and then solving all the problems that were presented to me on the door pretty easily and without damaging the other person very much, and giving you the ability to choose how much you want to hurt the person, you know, or whether you just control them or give them some pain or whatever, you know, and keep myself safe. You know, I might go home with like a little scratch or a bruised something, but like I wasn't breaking my hands by smashing people in the head anymore. I've even got big like bone chips on my elbows from elbowing people in the head and stuff like that. And it stopped all of that stuff. And so it's so important for people like myself and those around me to pass on the martial art and to keep it alive, because there's just too many cowboys out there just ruining this martial art. And it's sickening, and that's really all I have to say about it. The wife asked me to do the video, so I've done the video. But yeah, it drives me crazy seeing this happen to what was an incredible martial art. It's incredibly famous, but now it's just getting watered down and it's becoming a joke. And yeah, we simply won't be turning our academy into a joke. It's going to stay dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and what it means to be a martial art, and we will stay steadfast to that. You're welcome to compete. Go compete. That's great. Yeah. Like, the best thing about competing is learning to deal with the pressure of somebody that wants to fight you. Yeah. It's not a real fight, but like for most people, it's as close as they're going to get, you know? So like, I'm not saying don't compete. I'm just saying don't dedicate your whole life to a sport and not be able to fight in real life. Understand that there's a dramatic difference between the two, and I would much rather train to fight and the sport's easy than train for the sport and then find out that my skills don't equate to real life fighting. Anyway, that's my lot. Have a good day. Bye.